Hey everyone, Happy New Year to everyone out there. What we're going to do today is a faux bucktail preacher style jig. In the vise is a 1/2 ounce weedless banana head jig with a 5/0 Gamakatsu 604 hook, and the color is green shad. Well, at least that's what I call it, which is simply a pearl with a little bit olive green and an orange belly. So we're going to get started with some 210 denier flat wax nylon thread as our base. We'll cut the excess off. And get a little bit more on here, so because this material is very slippery, so it has a tendency to want to pull out and slide on you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my faux bucktail that I already pre-cut to length, and for a jig of this size, which is just going to be roughly around 6.5 inches, give or take, 4 inches should be pretty good. And with this stuff, the reason why I would use faux bucktail, what I really like about it is it's tapered just like natural bucktail. It does have some problems, and it's long, but the problems are minuscule. It's just getting used to tying with it because it is very slick. That's one of the hardest things to do with it. Cutting it, I just trim the ends with my scissors. Bolt cutting it, I use a heavy-duty poultry shear that works really well. And for a jig of this size, you would need bucktail after you even out the ends. You would need it to be about 4 inches, which is hard to get. So this stuff is readily available, and it works really good. The action is similar to bucktail, as is the taper. It's really nice to work with. So we're going to take some of this, and we're going to just put a couple loose wraps, and we're going to work it just to the sides, and then we're going to lash it down. I have a little loose one in here that I'm trying to catch. There we go. Now, I got that tied in. I'm going to take some of this. This is just plain white strung hackle. Normally, you would cut this fluffy stuff off, but because of the length, it's hard. Like, I have this in 5 to 7 inch, and I don't have any real long feathers that are good, so I got to use this part. So what I did was I trimmed that fluff down, and it's going to be in the bucktail, so it's not a big deal. So what I'm doing is I'm going to put this, I'm going to position this stem right at the bottom part of that collar. And what I mean by that is you could see the width of this. It's on the bottom part, which would be the belly part. And I'm going to do the same thing with another hackle feather that I already cut to the same length. Made sure everything was the same on it, or close to it. And I'm going to put it in the same place on the other side. And the reason I want it on the bottom part of that jig collar is because we're going to add more feathers. We're going to add some grizzly hackle. And I didn't bare the stem because the stem is smaller on this, so I have some of the barbels in there. Sort of stiffens it up and makes it a little more durable. And I'm going to position this right above that first one on the top part of that jig collar. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And where you want it, you'll see there's a natural curve. You want the curved part facing in towards the jig. You want the outer section facing out. And once you're in, start wrapping. Okay, we got our feathers tied in. The next part is more faux bucktail. And I have this already, like I said, I already cut it to save some time. And all I got to do is even the ends. Just a little bit. We're going to tie this in 2 separate clumps. It's a little easier to manipulate that way. Now I'm going to tighten it down a little bit. Just a couple wraps till I get this side tied in. As I said, it's a little slippery, so you have to position it and get it buttoned down a little bit before you move on to the next piece. Otherwise, you're liable to have it slip out on you. And a short piece. So once I'm happy with that positioning of that faux bucktail, I got it all tied in. Looks pretty even all the way around. Now I'm going to lash it down, and I'm going to put a lot of pressure. And you'll see when I get to the top here, it's going to want to, as it gets down, it's going to, the thread is going to want to slip over the very ends. That's okay, because we're going to keep going where we build up the thread there before we tie in our top. Now I got my faux bucktail tied in. It's nice and secure. Feathers are all tied in nice and neat. Just trying to get these situated. Next step is I'm going to take a little orange tuft of natural bucktail. I already cut it, just got to even the ends up a little bit. And I don't want this as long as the bucktail because I'm only using it as an accent color. Just to tie a small section of it. Right in the bottom. Just like the orange belly. That's optional, you don't need it if you don't want it. We're almost done. Now we're going to flip it up. And I'm going to lower this down so you can see it a little better. There we go. And I'm going to take some olive bucktail. I already cut. This is the faux bucktail, by the way. And we're going to even out our ends. And we're going to tie that in. Split the hook and spread it out. Doesn't have to be a lot because we're just basically putting this on for coverage and for that extra color. And now we can lash it down once we get it. I think that's positioned pretty good. It'll even out once I take it out of the vise. Whoop. See how that slipped? That's why I'm holding on to it. First time that ever happened to me, I was like, what's going on here with this stuff? You have to, it's a little trial and error. Again, once you position it, you got to start lashing it down. That's the hard part, getting it straightened out to where you want it without tying it down too tight till you can't move it. In this case, I didn't have it down tight enough. I moved it and all my thread slipped. You can also glue down in between layers. I don't do it a lot, and I don't do it because it makes it harder if I have to adjust. Then my material is glued. So once I get it, now I'm going to pick this up again. There we go. Sorry about that. Just at the size of this jig, I can't get it reasonably in the frame. I want to lash this collar down that I have no color showing through. It's a big jig, big fish getter as well. If you live in any of them areas where you get ledge lakes, everybody knows about these jigs. I do mine a little different. Like I said, it's a little bit harder to work with this faux bucktail, but it's so long and it has a very similar action and taper as natural bucktail. It's for the little bit of inconvenience you have working with it, I think it's well worth getting it. So we're almost done. All we got to do is whip finish it, and then we're going to put a weed guard in this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Trim it. And I'm going to go against my own convention here, which would normally be Sally Hansen's, but this is faux bucktail, so I'm going to use super glue. This is super glue brush on. We're just going to put a pretty good coat on this. Flip it around. So it's nice and secure. And with the collar that size, I don't got to worry about getting it on the hair too much anyway. Now we're going to take some super glue gel. I'll put the weed guard in, then we'll show you what we have. And there it is. Trying to get it all in the frame. But that is our weedless faux bucktail preacher jig. This stuff is almost indestructible. It works just as well as regular bucktail. There's a little bit of harder, like I said, a learning curve to working with it. But once you get it, you can make a lot of these things up and they'll last. They won't get beat up as much as regular bucktail. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.